Sorry. Recorder's on. So it's 10:06, and this is the meeting of the Special Assigned District Advisory Committee. Do we have to do attendance or roll call? We've got Cookie Piedmont is here. Murphy Webster here. All right, he's got his camera on. David Dumas is here. And then if you'll introduce the rest.
All right, Senior Planner Jason Poole with Current Planning, and then we've got Daniel Moore with our City Attorney's Office, and Chris Bauer with Focus EDGB applicant for this case.
Okay. So, Jason, if you want to start us off.
All right, we have one case on the agenda today. It is SPSD 212001. It was held over from the last meeting, and we briefed it then. So I'm going to. Good morning, Commissioner Carpenter. All right, Commissioner Carpenter has stepped in the room. All right, so since we briefed this from the last time, I'm going to hit the highlights, and feel free to jump in and ask questions, or if you want me to elaborate on something, I can go back. This is SPSD 212001. It's an application to expand and create a new sub-district within the McKinney Avenue Sign District on property within the McKinney Avenue Sign District and the Uptown Sign District, Zone Plan Development Number 193, Sub-District 160. And as we touched on before, this zoning was amended in 2021 to allow for a 29-story office use with retail and restaurant uses on the ground floor. The request is approximately 2 acres. The site is located at the southwest corner of Fairmount and McKinney Avenue. To the northwest is PD number 9. Fairmount Street is on the northeast, and then McKinney Avenue and Maple are on the southeast and southwest. The site currently has a single-story gym and restaurant use on it. Here is how the overlay situates. You can see the Uptown SPSD on the southwest side of the property, and then on the northeast, you see the McKinney Avenue. So it falls within the Uptown and the McKinney Avenue Spine subdistrict. Both of these districts were created in the early 90s. They have not had any updates since. I do believe McKinney Avenue did have a withdrawal recently, but other than that, it's just been minor geographical amendments, no real sign requirements. The McKinney Avenue has 3 sub-districts. We've got the peripheral, the quadrangle, and the spine. This particular request is consistent with the spine. Again, on the last SSDAC meeting on November 8th, this item was held for this meeting. Here are the purposes of this new sub-district. The objectives are to consolidate the sign provisions for the site into one set of regulations. It's to allow the additional use for plastic faces, and this is under the condition that they be channel letters with no plastic trim cap. It allows additional projection and locations for flat attached signs. It defines and provides for the use of blade signs. It does allow larger monument signs with conditions, and it is to define and provide for window art displays. And all of these are put up against the current McKinney Avenue spine requirements. Here's the location of the site in relation to the SBSDs, and the location in relation to other sign districts. You can see the bulk of the sign districts to the south are the downtown perimeter and SBSD, and then just normal business zoning, that's all in green. You can see to the east, we have a portion of the downtown perimeter and just regular non-business zoning, that's in orange. And you can see some of the other special provision districts that surround the area, but the bulk to the south being business zoning and to the east being non-business. Here's the aerial and zoning maps and the surrounding uses. To the south, mostly mixed use. To the east, we have multifamily to the east, we have, yes, a multifamily use. There's a PD 225, which I kind of outlined some in the report. There's a multifamily use and a hotel. To the west, we have some restaurant uses, as well as further west, we have another multifamily, which some of these provisions look for. And then to the north, we have office uses and PD 9, which is primarily office use. This map shows I guess we're getting a delay. There we go. This map shows the high rises in the area. A lot of these were added after the ordinance. The yellow shows which ones were added after. The red are the ones prior to the SBSD. And I just wanted to kind of highlight some of those. This will be the tallest in the two SBSDs. I didn't do a comparison outside the SBSDs. It's not the tallest, but in relation to these two SBSDs, this would be the tallest development in the area. Here's the first of the conditions. This is for all signs, and the purpose of this was for the addition of lighting requirements and the plastic being provided on the channel letters. And again, this is to be consistent with the spine. That's the intent. So I'm only really highlighting the differences from the spine. So these are intended to address effective lighting for signs mounted on glass facades, advances in lighting technology, which is mainly the LED, and allow for utilization of modern yet still appropriate high-end sign making techniques. And that was kind of the intent behind the prohibition of trim cap. Here's the actual provisions. This additional use of plastic would only apply to the Mayville subdistrict. These are some of the signs that are allowed and not allowed in this district. So on the left, they're plastic face cabinets, which these requirements seek to prohibit. On the right would be a metal face push-through type cabinet with plastic graphics and the bulk of the face being metal. And the current conditions do allow for that. This is a comparison for channel letters with trim cap. You can see some of the issues with trim cap. This is one of the more common ways to make signs now. They do have additional projections based on how these are done with raceways. And then you can see the degradation that tends to happen with trim cap. These are some of the more modern sign making techniques, especially with LED coming into play. You can make a thinner sign. You can do things that you couldn't do with a traditional lighting style. So on the left there, it's set up to mimic an open face channel letter. And then you can see in the middle there on top, that is a retainer based channel letter. It's got metal retainers on it. Right below that is a halo lit letter, and to the upper right are LED bulbs that are meant to mimic incandescent bulbs. It's an open face channel letter. And then below that, the Flora lofts, which you may remember from a few years ago going through the Arts District. Those are trim capless channel letters, where it's a thick piece of plastic that the letter is formed around, and it doesn't contain trim cap. And they also reverse light. or halo light with a backplate behind it. These are the general conditions that are being proposed for attached signs. By comparison, it does allow for attached signs to be placed on any facade in the upper level, which is above 36 feet. The McKinney Avenue spine currently only allows for signs to be placed on facades adjacent to a right-of-way. And then 51A 1507 limits a sign's location to an upper level facade below 14 stories to 2 signs. The intent of this would be to accommodate for some of the multi-story high-rises that are in close proximity of this building. And then for the signs being mounted on upper level facades, mainly those are meant to be viewed from a distance. So that was to kind of account for those rather than from the right-of-way below. And there's the actual conditions. Here is an applicant provided view of the facades that we're looking at. You can see where that 14th story is approximately. Basically the area between 36 foot and the 14 foot, there would only be a limit of 2 signs per facade. Above that, there's no limit on the number of signs. It just falls under that 5% of the upper level facade that the McKinney Avenue spine district goes with. And then of course for the 36 foot below line, I guess 36 foot above grade and below, they're allowed 10% of that facade area for all the signs located in that area. That would be the lower facade versus an upper facade. Here is the proximity to the buildings that we were referring to. The Gables McKinney to the northeast is approximately 150 feet from any facade located on this site. And then the Saline, which looks like I captured something in there that I shouldn't have, but the Saline to the northwest, which you may recall came through earlier this year in the Uptown SPSD, is approximately 375 feet. And you can see how those facades would come into play if you did live in one of these multifamily buildings. The next modification to the spine sub-district is for flat attached signs to project up to 18 inches from a building. Currently, they're allowed 8 inches. This provision is intended to address obsolete construction methods, which signs during this time, especially cabinets, when the ordinance were adopted, had to be thicker than 8 inches to allow for light to disperse. And that's not really a necessary requirement anymore. And then these signs are intended to be viewed from a distance on a glass facade. And I kind of explained that with the issues that come with a reverse channel letter being halo lit on a glass facade and how that reflection comes into play. And it's just not a way to light a sign on a glass facade. So that was kind of the intent behind the flat attached sign modifications. Here's 2 signs from the Uptown SPSD, the Capitol Grill, which is a set of reverse channel letters. All these signs are backlit. These happen to be halo lit, the Capitol Grill. And then you've got the Crab House on the right, which is a backlit sign that the light is dispersed through the face and halo lights from behind. You can see it's on a backplate and then the cabinet below. The next condition was for projecting signs, and it restricts the use of projecting signs when blade signs are located on the facade. I assume there will be some questions about this, but this provision is intended to distinguish projecting signs and blade signs. In the original provisions, there were not any descriptions on how these signs project. It was just any sign that projected more than 18 inches, so it could project in any direction. A blade sign would limit it to being perpendicular from that facade, and that is one of the intents behind this is to distinguish that. And then these types of signs would be for the lower level retail on that Fairmount facade, which is where they're limited to. And here's that requirement. Here are some projecting signs under this this provision that is currently in place. So you've got the Fox on the right, or excuse me, the left, which is an exposed neon illuminated sign, and it's more of a blade sign. But then also from the Fort Worth Avenue Special Provision Sign District, the Sylvan 30 letters, those are approximately 2 foot thick. That under these provisions would make it a projecting sign, even though it is flat up against the building. So that's kind of the intent behind that delineation. This next is for the requirements specifically towards blade signs. It does define them, and then again, they're like projecting signs, but they must have multiple faces and those messages be perpendicular to the facade that it's mounted on. Again, to further distinguish projecting signs and blade signs, it allows for larger projecting signs on the Fairmount facade that would more accurately be considered blade type signs according to modern standards and provide visibility for tenants in areas of increased density. Here are the actual requirements. These are pretty consistent with the current provisions for business zoning. Just to give you a point of reference, these are some blade signs in the, I guess the Potbelly would be within the Uptown sign district. And then the Twisted Root there on the left actually came from Deep Ellum. It's an exposed neon, both of them. And just to kind of give you an idea of blade signs. The next modification would be to detached signs. And these are to be more consistent with what's allowed under the business rules-based zoning. There is a limitation in there to not exceed 6 feet in height and a requirement that all of these be monument signs. Under business zoning rules, there is a 200-foot separation between all detached signs on the same premise. There is a request in here to reduce that by 25 feet, allowing for 175-foot separation. And it does allow for larger detached signs than what is in the Spine District currently. These are consistent more with the Quadrangle Subdistrict, another McKinney Avenue Subdistrict, which is similar to this, kind of a shopping center and office, and it's only that one building was how the Quadrangle was set up. And this provides an allowance for areas of more density. And here are the requirements. These are some of the detached signs. The 3131 McKinney is in the Spine. Currently, they allow for a 20 square foot sign. That is approximately 20 square foot. And then on the right is the McKinney and Olive, which is actually in the downtown perimeter. And that was one of the ones with the channel letters that had the retainers on it. But you kind of get an idea, both of those would be considered monument signs. And the final condition is the allowance of window art displays. There's only one other place in the code where we have these. It is in the downtown Special Provision Sign District. In this district, they are limited to the Fairmount Street facade, and displays have to be interior to the window. Again, it provides for a use like that of what is allowed in the downtown SPSD. Based on that proposed elevation we saw before, these displays are limited to the 3 windows on the northwest end of the Fairmount Street facade. And these are the actual requirements themselves. The only change between this provision and the downtown provision, from what I recall, is that the downtown is for vacant buildings. This would be for occupants in the building, the use of of those windows. And these are some of the window art displays from downtown. On the left, we've got 1505 Elm, which is kind of just a mural painted inside that window. And then on the right is a window display from Neiman Marcus. Here is the development plan from PD 193, Subdistrict 160. You can kind of see how the building is situated with Fairmount Street to the north on this map and the way it's tilted. And then I guess McKinney Avenue to the plan east, and then Maple to the south. It shows the height in there, the office tower at 417 feet or 29 stories. Then it goes to the podium on the northwest of that, and then all sitting on top of the parking podium there, and then PD 9, which is not part of this request, but it does fall one lot in there, which is outside this request, but PD 9 to the plan west. Here's a landscape plan. These are some of the site photos. You can see I tried to surround the district entirely. So southwest on McKinney and facing southeast on Fairmount. You can see the Gold's Gym there, and kind of moving my way around clockwise. There's northwest on Maple. You can see the existing Trulux, and then northwest on Leonard. Behind me is that Hotel Zaza. And northwest on McKinney, and then northeast on Maple. And then northeast on Maple and southeast on Maple. And west on McKinney and northwest on Leonard. And then southeast on Maple and southeast on Fairmount. This is from PD 9. And northeast on McKinney and southwest on McKinney. And southeast on Fairmount and southeast on Leonard. Southwest on Fairmount and northwest on Maple. That's the Celine there on the right. And here's some photos from signs around the district. You can see that there's a Care Now that has the halo lit letters with metal faces. There's painted applied signs. There's the Dickies sign that has exposed neon on a metal face. The Hotel Zaza, which would be considered non-illuminated. Down there in the bottom right corner, you've got a painted applied sign on a fence, and then the MAA Worthington, which is a metal cabinet with plastic graphics in there that's been routed out. Due to the overall change of use on the property, the nature of the site development, the consistency with the purpose and intent for the special provision sign districts, and the continued use of the committee review for sign CAs, staff is in support of the request, and staff recommends approval subject to the conditions. Any questions?
Jason, just a couple. Well, no, probably more than a couple. Okay, I kind of hinted at this before our meeting started, but not anything specific to the signs. But the quote, historic nature of McKinney, the only thing I can recall that hasn't been taken down and restored, other than a few of the old historic homes, is the McKinney Street trolleys. So do we have anything that restricts signage like we have in Deep Ellum? Because I don't recall any historic signage down there necessarily.
Let me pull up one of these charts.
Okay.
Actually, let me go back to the purpose. I think some of the intent for this, like it does require metal faces, which would require any kind of graphics to be illuminated, just the graphics themselves. It does, I believe, promote the use of neon being in the material restrictions.
Mm-hmm.
There are still neon signs down there. From what I understand, a lot of the intent behind the district, it does give a nod to the trolley But from my understanding and what I've seen is it's looking for a higher end type of sign and not just the run of the mill standard signs that you get in other districts, like a business zoning district. Let me see. Yes, it does. Yeah, outside of the material and the sizing,
Mhm.
I think those would be the requirements, that there be some kind of nod towards the historic districts or the trolley itself. But I think it's become more of a look for higher end signs.
Okay. Also, on the blade signs, and we've gone through a lot of material, so help me if I'm wandering here. But on the blade signs, it was facing Fairmont only. What is the rationale for that? I mean, why allowed toward Fairmont only? What was the reasoning or rationale? And I don't know if we need to ask Chris that at a later time or what, so.
It was my understanding that that was primarily where the walking public would be closest, as far as where the retail is located. And with that sidewalk there, where it would be more needed and where you would need to see something from a sidewalk if you're walking. Being that the building's right up against that sidewalk, that was my understanding, but I can refer to the applicant if there's more to that.
I think that's very accurate. Most of the Trulux, which is an anchor, is located at the corner of McKinney and Maple, and that will be very traditional signage. That's clearly the largest retail anchor tenant. The balance of the retail is more smaller, miscellaneous and sundry, kind of grab and go type of stuff. And we definitely did not want to clutter up the McKinney Avenue frontage. But when you get around to the Fairmount side, it's more walkable, and we figured if the blade sign would give it a little bit of visibility for cars that were going either north or south on Paramount to see it, done tastefully, of course. And because it is more of the smaller retailers, and while it doesn't relate directly to the question, also probably material to it is the retail fronts a parking garage that's back behind. And so as you go further west away from McKinney on Fairmount, it's actually spandrel glass that's with garage in the background. And so the reason for the window displays were to liven it up and make it more of a lively feel and camouflage the fact that when the retail stops, but the facade keeps going, we wanted to have that same vibrant feel of retail, even though it's really not.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah, that helps. Clarification on one thing, and Jason, this one's definitely for you. In the downtown sign district area where we allow window displays, working in conjunction with the Dallas Police Department, I believe we limited that to, was it 25%? Because they need visibility inside those windows in case there's a robbery or something in process. So do we have, is that, my memory is failing me, or is that still a restriction? I didn't see anything in the verbiage here.
I believe so. These are not allowed to be attached to the window in any part. They have to be located entirely within the space behind the window. So there would actually be no covering of the window itself.
Okay.
Can I add to that? Chris Bauer, these are actually vitrines. They are not true windows. There is a backdrop to these. So visibility is only the depth of the vitrine itself. You cannot see into, like the downtown ones, you're seeing into a vacant space. This you cannot see in.
That's a very valid point because there's no occupiable space behind it. It's drive aisle for the parking garage back behind.
Okay, it's sort of like the display windows at Neiman Marcus or something like that, where they're actual scenes or something like that, set in that setback. Okay. Jason, you obviously did a drive-by. What about your feedback on the visibility of the Gables and the Selena, I think it was the other multifamily? Did you perceive, given what you saw from where the signs are proposed to be, if that would have a negative impact on those residential facilities? Because I think it was
That
stories.
That was the intent behind limiting the signs located below the 14th floor to just 2 in that space. In an effect to, if someone were to look out their window, they're not looking directly into a sign.
Okay,
Was the intent of that requirement.
okay, that's great. And I hope this is my last question, but I'll keep scrolling down through my notes. There was a request to reduce the distance between those, quote, monument signs from 200 feet to 175. What was the rationale behind that request for reduction?
That was really a derivative of site layout. So that was really specific to the distance from the corner of Maple and McKinney, working your way west up Maple. We had very thoughtfully aligned our circular drive so that it spoke to and related to the crescent entrances on the other side. There's also a garage entry and exit. And so if we honor the 200 feet, in our minds, 2 things transpired. One is it seemed really wedged in a very tight constraint. And secondly, potentially, although everything's workable, potentially it offered a little bit of a blind spot to people that might be coming out and queuing on to take a right to go northbound. And we just felt it had a better feel having it just on the east side of the entrance to our circular drive. So that 25 foot of latitude allowed us to be a little bit more thoughtful. We envision this as being kind of a low level, real classic looking introduction to our drive and to our project. And having that proximity to our entrance, we felt was very favorable architecturally.
I would like to add to that there are 3 signs, monument signs allowed on our property per the rules right now. This one would apply only to the sign that Jeff just mentioned, and that is that the sign on the corner of Maple and McKinney would be the one sign. There's also a sign on the corner of McKinney and Fairmont that would be number 2, and number 3 would be this sign that Jeff was just speaking about at the main entrance. The other 2 are, in fact, quite a bit further than 200 feet from one another. So this really applies to the one sign.
Okay, thanks. And Jason, the next one is for you, and it may be a verbiage issue. Where you're talking about projected signs in the chart, there's something I simply didn't understand because it says, under the McKinney Avenue SPSD for Maple, prohibited on Fairmont facade when blade signs are maintained. I'm sorry, I didn't understand that comment in the chart.
Let me pull up that chart.
I think it was under projecting. Let me scroll over. Yeah, projecting. And that's something I didn't understand what the sentence was supposed to mean.
So essentially, the intent for that was that projecting signs are not allowed when blade signs are present. So they can have one or the other.
Oh, okay.
And So in this chart, the projecting signs are prohibited when there's blade signs maintained on that facade.
Okay. And my.
So the
last-
only way,
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, the only way they could have a projecting sign would be to not have any blade signs on this particular facade on Fairmount.
And the blade sign is perpendicular two-sided.
Correct.
So if you have those, then you don't have the projecting sign.
Correct.
It's flat.
Right.
So.
And I think our collective approach was to maintain consistency in our approach of branding that retail along Fairmont. So it wasn't either or. We were gonna, working together, we wanted to be consistent in how we approach that retail.
So it won't be that one business has a projecting and one has a blade. It's
Correct.
all or nothing, blade or projecting.
Yes,
The intention is blade, I assume, since.
that's
what
the way we're leaning. Yeah, that's exactly right.
And to add to that, there is a spacing requirement for blade signs that would limit basically the way they're spaced. Each retail tenant would get one blade sign due to the spacing requirement.
What if you have an excess of retail tenants? I mean, because remember on the arts buildings where we had multiple tenants and everybody wanted to have their name on the, wasn't actually a monument sign, but on the wall that projected down there. So what if you have multiple tenants? Is it just sort of the company would control who gets to put information on that sign?
As far as the blade signs or attached signs in general?
The blade signs. I can't envision having multiple tenants that they're vying for, who gets the lands, the footprint on that blade sign.
We did not distinguish in the ordinance who actually was able to advertise on the blade sign.
But it is a.
That would be, it's just limited to 20 square feet and you get 1 per 25 foot of frontage, or they have to have 25-foot separation. So it's utilize that space accordingly. We're not telling them who can advertise on it and who can't. It's strictly, you can have this many and they're this size.
Oh, okay, because I was confused. I was thinking of the blade sign versus the monument sign. And last question, the mullion. I need some of you who are smarter at mounting these signs to tell me if engineering has vouched for the mount, because that's a fairly new proposition. Has engineering evaluated how those new signs would be attached? Because you're dealing primarily with a glass building, so you only have the mullion to attach the sign to. So, Jason, have you guys thoroughly evaluated that process and are comfortable with it?
In permitting, we require that an engineer sign off on anything that's over 100 square feet or above 50 feet in the air. So they actually have to evaluate those mullions and stamp it before we can, building inspections can approve the permit. So that is our fallback on that. It is a modern way to mount signs. You see it all over the place. They are designed or can be designed to support signs. So we are comfortable with that. And as long as the engineer can sign off on it, that furthers that guarantee that the sign will stay as it's supposed to.
Okay, that takes all my questions. Now I'll turn it over since I've monopolized the entire discussion.
Murphy, you got any questions?
You're muted.
That's kind of Murphy.
Murphy, I think you're muted.
Sorry about that.
Ah,
You know, I don't have specific questions for the submittals itself, other than the fact acknowledging that this type of product certainly wasn't considered when the base zoning was put in for McKinney or the Uptown for this type of building at that conjuncture, if you will. Unique situation overlapping two districts. So You know, I guess what I'm trying to say is I understand why they're reaching out for it. For the purpose and the initiative to get this done. That's really all I had to say.
Thank you, Murphy. Commissioner?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. First one about the size of the monument signs. This seems a little out of character or out of scale for the Spine subdistrict, because if I read the report correctly, the Spine subdistrict limits monument signs to 20 square feet and peripheral to 15. Of course, quadrangle's 150, but it's a little different animal. It's fine. I'm trying to visualize if you have a cap of height at 6 feet, and to get to 125 square feet, you'd have a 6 foot by 20 foot sign, which seems really impressive sign. And so is that the intention? I mean, is that?
Do you want to?
Well, actually, that allows a little bit of latitude, but the intent of the multi-tenant monument that would be at the entry drive that Jeff was mentioning earlier is really the one that needs the most attention for the number of tenants that we would want to put on that sign. The other two monuments are really going to be single tenant monuments, and we envision those to be much smaller than the multi-tenant monument at the front.
And even the larger one, we've gravitated increasingly, as well as our competitors in recent developments, of avoiding anything that felt like you were walling off your development from the surrounding area. So I think if you look at one of our competitors at Olive and McKinney, or the approach that we took at Park District, right on the park, we've brought those down more to the human scale. And so to accomplish the same thing, we've extended the length. And so that's historically, maybe sometimes on a radius, that's yet to be determined, but more in kind of keeping with and augmenting the hardscape and the softscape surrounding it. But I think part of it, but your math is.
6 feet by 20 does not seem human scale to me.
No, and yeah, and I think there's some latitude. I don't think we envision going 6 feet.
I guess the question is, could that be refined a little bit? If you're going to differentiate between single tenant monument signs and multi-tenant, and the single tenant are going to be much smaller, could that be, brought, refined somehow? And
I think we could certainly work on a compromise for that, no question.
I would also say that the 6 feet high is not necessarily how high the big billboard feeling monument is gonna be. That does allow us to do some doodad extensions, if you will. That the sign plane itself is lower, maybe 4 feet, but there's a capital on the ends or something like that. The measurement is done by the very top of the sign to the base.
What Olive and McKinney's, to use a specific example, the Olive and McKinney of one of our competitors in Park District that we did, there were variations of a similar theme, and those included a stone that was kind of complementary with some of the facade stone to kind of accentuate that. And that, I'm not sure if that went to 6 feet, but it was lower than 6 feet. But then you had really glass in front of it that was the labeling. And to that point, it was down below the top of that.
no, I understand.
But the long and short of it is, yes, we're willing to negotiate in that regard and come up with a reasonable compromise.
Yeah. I have a question about blade signs. This is my ignorance of it, is when it says it has multiple faces, can a blade sign have more than 2 faces? It has to be perpendicular. I mean, it seems to me you have one.
It would be limited to 2.
Because I'm trying to picture
Another
a multiple face that could be perpendicular.
The way it's written, it could have more. Like if you think of the park sign in Deep Ellum on, I want to say it's like 2700 Commerce. It's just a big block on the building. It's got faces on 3 sides.
Okay.
So potentially you could do something to that effect, like I didn't see that they limited your activity
Okay.
if it did come in, but
And then I saw the spacing provision at 25 feet, this is approximately one per first floor tenant. Was the intention really to, I mean, if you have a first floor tenant that has a longer facade than 25 feet, was the intention to allow each tenant to have more than one blade sign, or was the intention to limit each tenant to a blade sign?
That's a great question. I think presently, the type of tenant that we're looking for along Fairmont, we don't anticipate that they would take all of that frontage. Because there's a frontage to depth ratio that kind of makes sense retail wise. And we envision that probably being 4 of your smaller type of venues.
Oh, right, those are my own questions. I mean, overall, the whole thing makes sense to me. Those are just the two things that points out.
Jason, you said, staff recommends approval with conditions. Can you review the conditions and give us your, what the staff's thinking and thoughts were on that?
Yes, so the conditions were what they submitted as requirements. It's up real quick. So the first with the general being the use of plastic and then additional uses for lighting, being that these ordinances were written in the 90s, this was pre-LED. LED was a game changer when signs came out. It redid everything from safety all the way to end application. Like it's just a totally different way of making signs, and it's become cost effective. And that is kind of the standard these days for signs. So I think part of the intent was to maintain with the plastic a modern look and a high-end look, which is characteristic of the district. And that was the idea behind limiting the trim cap and allowing LED, because I think this district, from my understanding, is looking for something more to signs rather than just a common place sign. Right. So that was the idea behind those conditions.
Jason, I have a picture, a close-up, if anyone would like to see it, of the trim capless letter that we're going to have. Pass this around.
Yeah. I don't know if we have a way to show it online.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, the exterior, much like the interior of the spaces, really it's all gravitated to LED in recent years, and it's a lot greater reliability, a lot better quality of light, a lot better consistency, lower operating cost. And so really it's used almost exclusively.
But staff's logic was that there wasn't another, like, the modernization requires some sort of leeway in this to be able to have a modern sign. Even just the McKinney Avenue base requirements, LED wouldn't be allowed unless building inspections allowed it as an adequate substitute. The use of channel letters on a facade, that is a commonplace type of application. It does cover less of the facade. So I think that went into the logic behind allowing a channel letter over a cabinet. That would be the alternative to mounting a sign on a glass facade, as having a metal face cabinet. And that would of course cover a bulk of the facade. This allows you to still see the facade through the letters, and it has a lower impact on the facade and the architecture itself, which also rings true to the intent behind some of these districts. Even though this architecture is not historic, it does give a lesser impact on the view of that architecture, if that makes sense.
Well, what about the comments on the halo lighting on glass?
Okay, so as far as halo lighting a sign, a channel letter on glass, glass is a very reflective surface. It can act as a mirror. So being that these letters have to be mounted a certain distance from the facade to be able to bounce that light back against it, it allows views at certain angles to where you basically see behind the letter. And it makes it hard to read. It makes it unattractive because you can see the lighting actually in there. There are ways to build around that, but glass as a halo lighted surface is not real cooperative. So the other thing is mounting on glass usually requires a frame. That is difficult with a halo lighted letter because you need a consistent surface across the backside of that letter for that light to be an even distribution. When there's multiple layers for the frame or the recess of the glass, it doesn't give a consistent halo light, so it becomes harder to read at night whenever those letters are lit up.
So we're recommending not doing the halo lighting on the glass areas. Is that-
Correct. That was, and the other way would be to put a back plate in there. And that goes back to covering a bulk of the facade.
Yeah.
So this provision is to allow a letter that the face is internally illuminated, but still maintain a high-end type of sign fabrication like a reverse lit channel letter would be.
Right.
This requires more time fabrication. These generally are like they're a higher end type of sign. So I think that in staff's opinion, that honored the intent of these ordinances or these purposes for these districts is to have a nicer
Higher
sign.
quality.
Hmm.
Okay. So with the staff's conditions, was to the applicant, was there any issues with staff's conditions?
No, we had a number of discussions about this and they have agreed to them. We also have noted that for the commissioner's request, we'll take a look at the conditions, additional conditions for the monument signs.
Okay. That's all my questions.
Hey, Jason, just for my own clarity, the below 14 foot, are they particular to the, I believe it, I'm sorry, 14th story? Are they dedicated to the building and the project itself, or is that, can that be tenant orientation? And if that's the case, does that apply per CO or does that apply for the building in total? Does that make sense?
So yes, the signs have to be premise signs, which means they can be the name of the project or the building itself, or they can be the name of individual tenants. We don't regulate the content of the signs.
Okay.
It does have to pertain to the premise.
Murphy, did that answer your question? Because I haven't.
Sort of. So, again, so that would be based on CO, if I'm hearing you correctly. So the
To an
rest,
extent, unless they name the premise, then it could be the name of the premise as well.
right.
So if they called this the Maple Building, it could say the Maple Building as long as it pertains to goods and services on the premise.
Maybe I didn't word that right. So if I'm a tenant going in and I can have a sign on 14 stories based on my CO, and the building can have one and another tenant can have one.
We're getting some feedback. Cookie, could you mute?
Sure.
Oh, one more time? Sorry about that.
Sorry. I'm just trying to see what the limitation of total signage at that 14 foot and under is.
Isn't it two?
It's just a limit of 2 per facade. So there can be no more than 2 signs, regardless of what they say in that area.
Okay. I was making sure it wasn't 2 per CO or 2 per.
No, it is based on the building facade and that area between the top of the lower level and the 14th story. And
Gotcha.
there are 2 signs allowed on each facade in that area, regardless of what they say.
Okay, maximum period.
Correct,
Okay,
correct.
that was what I was looking for, sorry.
Jason, a couple of follow-ups. On Commissioner Carpenter's question about the 6-foot height on the monument sign, that is already allowed in the spine district, correct?
Let me pull those conditions. I don't believe there's a
It's already
height
allowed.
restriction in the spine. From what I remember, there's just a 20 square foot limitation, and it may be that they're up to 25 feet tall. And this is just from memory. Let me get to that section. Okay, yeah, they're allowed to be 20 feet tall. There's not a restriction on a monument sign or not. That would be determined by the setback. So if it's less than a 15-foot setback, it would be required to be a monument sign. But in terms of height limitation, they're allowed 20 feet tall. So if it had a 15-foot setback, it could be a pole type sign or a non-monument sign and go up to 20 feet tall. If it is a monument sign and has less than a 15-foot setback, then it would be subject to those charts. And I believe at 20 square feet, in order to get any kind of visibility, you're looking at like maybe a 5 or 6 foot tall sign that's only 5 or 6 foot wide, depending on the height.
Okay, and I apologize, I misspoke. I was looking at marquee sign information where it says 2 foot 6 inches up to 6 feet. That is allowed in the spine district already, right?
Yes, 20 square feet is what they're allowed.
Okay. And then another question, I think someplace in the information you had sent out is that there were certain things where they would have to come back for a CA on specific signs. Can you tell us what those specific types of signs would be? I was a little confused by that.
Okay, so the requirements are for attached signs. Anything over 50 square feet will have to come back for a review. If it is a projecting sign and it projects more than 18 inches into the right of way, regardless of size, it would have to come back. For detached signs, if it has less than a 5-foot a 10-foot setback, which all of these signs they're proposing would, or if it's over 50 square feet, it would have to come back for a certificate of appropriateness. In terms of height on the building or anything like that, that doesn't play into the requirements, but it's strictly size and setback and projection into the right of way.
Okay, so it's pretty much the standard of if it exceeds the 50 foot that allows director review, then it would have to come back. Okay.
And as a point of clarification, another thing that would send it back would be if it were changeable in message, being that the way these requirements are written, there wouldn't be any changeable messages.
Jason, I have a question about that last statement. On the multi-tenant sign monument, there isn't a chance that tenants would change over time.
That's different than LED changeable,
Okay.
like digital display.
Oh, yes,
That's what we're.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, thank you for the clarification.
Any more questions? Do we have a motion?
I will motion to approve with the conditions set by the staff.
I'll second.
All right, we'll do a roll call vote. Cookie,
I vote to approve.
Murphy,
I vote to approve.
Commissioner Carter.
I don't think I can vote. Oh, I can't. Well, my vote would be to amend the motion to modify the size of the monument signs. Maybe perhaps limiting the district to one multi-tenant monument sign not to exceed the 6 feet and the 125 square feet, and other monument signs be limited to single tenant signs not to exceed.
Yeah.
On the motion,
50 feet.
go ahead, I'm sorry.
50
Okay, how do we have to kill one and then redo?
Yeah, so we should have had some discussion on the main motion before going into the voting. And so I think the easiest thing to do is just sort of go back to that point in time and then have,
Okay,
I'm happy to withdraw my.
yeah, and then have the commissioner make the motion to amend the main motion as she stated.
okay.
So is the question
Yeah,
about the.
Yeah,
Seeking
so-
agreement with the discussion on.
Yeah.
If we're in a discussion, then I would say I'm comfortable with approval if we revisit the monument provisions. And my suggestion would be that we look at allowing one multi-tenant monument sign of 6 feet in height, the cap of 125 square feet, and other monument signs in the district could only be single tenant signs, not to exceed 50 square feet.
And so that would need,
And so there would be
Okay.
discussion from the others.
well, we would need a second on that.
Yeah.
amendment.
do we have a second on the amendment?
Daniel, as the second on the original amendment, can I second Deborah's suggested amendment?
Yes, you can.
Yes.
Okay, then I will second it so we can get a vote on it.
All right, so Cookie seconds. Would,
So-
do we need to discuss?
Yeah, if there's any comments on
Okay.
the amendment.
Do we have any comments on the amendment?
No, I think it's appropriate.
Okay, so, then we'll vote on the new one.
Correct.
Roll call again. Cookie,
I vote aye.
Murphy?
Aye.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Aye.
And the vice chair votes aye as well.
So now we are on Murphy's motion as amended by the commissioner.
Okay,
So there's discussion on that motion now, if any.
is there any discussion on that motion?
Daniel, question.
No.
If we have approved Commissioner Carpenter's recommended, I'm thinking in terms of friendly amendment, then does the original motion need to be restated? Does it need to be rescinded and then stated differently?
It's just Murphy's
Yeah, so,
main motion as amended.
yeah, Murphy's
As
original
amended, okay.
motion was to approve with staff conditions. And now we add the Commissioner Carpenter's amendment to that. And so now we vote on that one if there's no other conversation or discussion.
No, I just wanted to
Okay.
be certain that what we were voting on was including Commissioner Carpenter's amendment. Okay, thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so we'll vote on the original motion. And so again, roll call, Cookie,
Aye.
Murphy.
Aye.
Commissioner Carpenter. And the vice chair says aye as well.
Okay, motion passes.
All right. Do we have any other business we need to discuss?
There's the minutes.
Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes from the last meeting?
I did.
I have not seen any errors. Did anybody else
Sir.
see any errors or corrections?
No,
All right, then the minutes stand as approved.
Thank you.
And then if there's no other business, it's 11:10 and we conclude this meeting.
thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Bye, David. Bye, Jason.